upper body workout, we're going to make sure that we're really focusing on our core, not just our arms, because oftentimes we struggle with things with our upper body in curling, not because we have lack of strength in our arms or our core, but we struggle to coordinate the two. So we're going to start with a breathing exercise. So you can either grab your hands, your ribs, either from the top or the back. And the idea is that we're going to take nice full breaths in through the nose and really breathe into the hands. And then breathe out the mouth like you're blowing some air into chocolate milk. So you're blowing bubbles through a straw into chocolate milk, and that's going to really squeeze the air out and turn your abs on. So take 3 breaths like that into the ribs and out through the mouth. Good, and on that last one, I want you to actually try to flatten the low back down onto the ground. So breathing in and breathing out. And what that flattening the low back down does is it brings our imaginary belt buckle up and our front ribs down. So we just turned on our core muscles. So we brought the ribs down, we brought the belt buckle up, we're turning on the core muscles. So this is a position we want to take with us. You can breathe in and out your nose here while holding this position. Now if I flip myself over, okay, I'm in a plank position of sorts. So we don't want to have that arch in the low back on the ground. We're going to flatten the low back onto the ground to bring the core into it, to make it easier to use our upper body as we're sweeping, doing rowing exercises, push-ups, etc. So we've got 3 prep exercises that are going to take what we learned on the mat to some upper body core exercises. So this is an exercise that you could do with a partner. Okay, and we've got our 6 feet distance here. Okay, you could do this with a partner, or you could attach the band to something on the wall. So in this example with your partner, of course, one of you has to be stabilizing while the other one is moving. If you're against the wall, you're the only one doing the stabilizing because the wall is very stable. So we're gonna have you punch out from the chest, okay, and we're gonna find a little athletic stance. So a little softness in the knees. Thinking about if we were lying on our back, trying to flatten the low back down. That's that belt buckle up, ribs down. Okay, so both of them are practicing as the wall right now, and the further you step away from the wall or your partner, the more tension is going to be on the band. What we're teaching our core to do is to stabilize while there's some resistance on the upper body. Okay, so for the first example, Kelsey is going to be the wall, and Amelia is going to punch out. She's out, and she's going to move her arms up and down while resisting at the core. Okay, try to keep soft knees, try to keep the belt buckle up, ribs down. And you could do this 10 to 15 times. For option 2, if Amelia is our wall, Kelsey is gonna start in at her chest, punch out, raise her arms a couple inches, come down and in. So you're gonna punch out, up, down, and in. You're trying to stabilize with your core and not necessarily up in the shoulders. Okay, so again, about 10 to 15, where we go out, up, down, and in. Next on our core stabilizing, coordinating with our upper body prep exercises is the shoulder plank taps. Okay, so of course if you have wrist or shoulder issue and you notice that this starts to bug you, what you could do is actually raise your hands up on a bench or an elevated surface, or skip this exercise altogether and we can do some of the other ones to work on that core and maybe go see a physio to get checked out in the wrist. So we're gonna start in a high plank position. Okay, so down on the ground. Tuck the shoulders over the wrists, okay, and we want to exaggerate that tail tuck, that belt buckle in, ribs down. So we want to tuck the tail under, keeping our hips up, keep the hips up a little bit higher. That's great, perfect. So we'll feel our core here in this position. Now with the plank taps, you can start just by shifting weight into one hand, lifting and lowering, okay, like Amelia's doing here, working on the core, working on stabilizing at the shoulder. Or Kelsey's gonna actually reach across and tap her opposite shoulder, yep, or opposite hand. Opposite shoulder or opposite hand while stabilizing at the core. Okay, good. Perfect. So you're going back and forth, stabilizing at the core. Good. Keeping that belt buckle up, ribs down. Last of the core, shoulder, upper body prep exercises is the bear march exercise. You're going to get down on all fours with your knees on the ground. Stack the shoulders over the wrists, the knees underneath the hips. And then you're going to push down through the hands and the feet to lift the knees up off the ground a couple of inches. Good. Okay. Holding this position is an option. Option 2 is just to lift and lower one foot, like Kelsey's doing. We're working on balancing and stabilizing at the core, keeping that belt buckle up, ribs down. we're trying to keep our hips stable and try not to rock back and forth. Okay, so we're working on our upper body, working on our core, and moving the lower body, just like we do when we're brushing. So for those that don't like to put their knees down, sorry, not proper. Okay, for those that struggle to do push-ups from the ground or just find more comfortable in the wrists and the shoulders, if their hands are elevated, I prefer you do that versus put your knees down. The reason being is it brings your core into the mix in the same way it does when you do knees elevated push-ups. So Amelia's elevated her hands onto the bench here. It could be a little bench, small bench, or a higher bench, which is totally fine. We're thinking belt buckle up, ribs down, and then the exact same thing, pulling our body down towards the bench, and then pressing our body away. Good, so bending and straightening, keeping the core tight, maybe get a little lower body nice and tight, everything squeezed in together. Perfect. The next exercise that you could superset with a row or do on its own is a push-up. We're going to demonstrate from the floor and hands elevated here in a moment. So you're going to start in a high plank position. I like to spread the fingers nice and wide, get the shoulders over the wrists. Then we want to make sure we get rid of any low back arch. We want to bring that belt buckle up, ribs down. Okay, and then the position from the bottom is making your body look like an A instead of a T. Okay, so go ahead, do a couple push-ups for me. Pull your body down, press the floor away. Think Chuck Norris, push the earth away. Good. So from behind, we're looking for that A position with the arms, not elbows up nice and high with a T. Next, we've got a single arm row, and ideally you're going to superset this with the push-ups. You'll do a set on each hand of the single arm row, and then a set of the push-up, and then repeat. Realistically, you could do this in whatever order you'd like though. So we're going to set up in a half kneeling position. This is something you could also do standing if you prefer. So if the band is in your left hand, the left leg goes back, and we want to kind of tuck the tail under so our core is tight and our glutes are on. Okay, so sitting up nice and tall, we're going to take the band and we're going to pull towards our back hip. So you get a nice squeeze inside and then straighten the arm. Now I'm a fan of squeezing, but then letting the shoulder blades open and release as you reach forward and pulling back. So the nice thing about this exercise is that we're actually having to stabilize through the lower body while the upper body is moving, which is kind of what happens when we're brushing. Perfect. So we can do 10 to 15 on each side and then move on to the push-up. So we are in a bear row position. There's plenty of bear exercises that you could do. We've already demonstrated the band version, and this is with a dumbbell. So you can set up with your right shoulder underneath, over top of your right wrist. Okay, a little softness in the knees, think belt buckle up, ribs down. Now we're working on our core while we work on our upper body strength. So Kelsey's gonna reach, she's reached towards, so her hands and her wrists are in line. She's gonna reach back towards her hip until her arm is in line with her body and then reaches forward. Okay, so we're getting this rowing position which mimics what we actually have to do while we're brushing. Activating the muscles in the back while activating the core, and then of course stabilizing through the hips. Is a face pull, and sometimes we have to get a little bit creative in where we want to attach the band to. Just make sure that it's a nice safe space. So we're going to do two variations, one from a high pull and one from about chest height. So you're going to hold shoulder distance apart, palms facing down, and then pull the band into your chest, driving the elbows back. Okay, so if it's a loop band, you're also trying to rip the band apart as you reach and pull forwards and backwards, working the muscles on the backs of the arms and also stabilizing through the core. The second exercise has you grab from something attached at shoulder height, okay? Walk back, palms facing down, holding the band. And actually you're gonna send your hips back. So now we're in a very similar position when we pull the band along the ground. We're in a very similar position as when we pulled from that high point, okay? But we're just having to hinge forward instead. So nice soft knees, keeping the core tight, same end position at the shoulders, nice big reach as you move forward. Good. With the overhead press, one of my favorite variations is a half kneeling variation. So you could do this seated or standing as well. We're going to demonstrate with a band as well as with a dumbbell. Okay, so Kelsey's set up so that if the dumbbell or the band is in her right hand, okay, her right leg is back, she's tucked her tailbone under, core is tight so the ribs are down. We want to point the elbows forward and try to stack the wrists. Okay, reach that elbow forward, lift up that arm a little higher. Good. And then we're going to punch straight up and then pull it back down. Good. straight up and down. So you can stabilize with the left hand on the leg or reach that left hand forward just to balance you out. Okay, as we punch up and down again, we're working on stabilizing through the core and the glutes and as the upper body is moving and doing work, okay? With a dumbbell, it looks the exact same, okay? We just aren't kneeling on the band, okay? Same thing, we wanna reach the elbow forward, okay? Stack the wrist, okay? And we're gonna reach straight up and straight down. Good, straight up and straight down. And I like to aim with the knuckles for the sky. Those knuckles to the sky, keep those ribs down, core tight.